Hey, hello out there in Barnes and Noble land. I'm Joe Hill, the author of Nosferatu, Lock and Key, and other family favorites. And it's my pleasure and honor to be speaking to Richard Osman, author of the Thursday Murder Club novels. I thought I'd like to introduce him first. Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club books have spent nearly 50 weeks at #1 on the UK Sunday Times bestseller list. From the beginning, these stories have sold like Gone Girl or a new Harry Potter. These mysteries are almost as well loved as Free Money, and there's no mystery why. Richard is a deft hand at misdirection and ingenious puzzles, skills he no doubt honed in his other life as the mastermind behind popular British game shows like 24-Hour Quiz and Pointless, the latter of which he co-hosts. But these books are so much more than clever whodunits, full of literary legerdemain. The Thursday Murder Club stories zoom in on the lives of 4 septuagenarians in the idyllic, llama-besieged retirement village of Cooper's Chase. One must do something to pass the time in the not always so golden years. Some join knitting clubs. Some do slow yoga. Elizabeth, Ibrahim, Ron, and Joyce hunt down murderers. They also drink prodigious amounts of wine, plot horn dog romantic escapades, blithely embarrass their children, and commit all manner of petty, satisfying crimes themselves. They love one another and are also mysteries to each other. It's a pleasure to see them pick apart a homicide, but it's even better to watch them gently, lovingly pick apart each other. The books are an understandable phenomenon. They're also a threat to public health, and I am the proof. My wife and I read both of these first 2 novels aloud to one another. We take turns. She reads while I'm folding the laundry or driving. I read while she's cooking dinner or working on a puzzle. At an especially tense moment in The Man Who Died Twice, she was working on a stir fry and lost track of what she was doing. A dish towel ignited, flames licking right up the wall. I faltered briefly, but my wife gave me a furious glare for daring to stop. So I obediently continued reading while she doused the flaming rag in the sink. I know my duty. The scorch marks came right off the plaster. I am told that Richard and his publishers cannot be held liable for any fire damage to your own property that might occur while reading these books. Proceed at your own pace. Richard, thanks for talking to me today.
Hey, Joe, I feel like we should just leave it there, shouldn't we? I don't think I can top that. I think that's the best sales job anyone's ever done. Thank you. So lovely to be talking to you.
It's a pleasure, and they're such wonderful books. The folks tuning in, I know we have a whole bunch of people watching, have been submitting questions for you about these books and how they were written. And a great many of those questions dovetail with my own. So for example, one reader writes, most of us think we have a novel in us, but don't dedicate the time to write one. What motivated you to start turning out pages and to stick with it? And that feels like a good place to start to me. Although I might have phrased it another way. How did such a great natural novelist wind up doing TV when you were obviously always supposed to be doing this?
Well, yeah, maybe I was supposed to be doing both, is the truth.
Maybe.
I've always tried to do what comes from the heart, is the truth. I've always tried to do the things that I love and the things that I enjoy. And for years, that was television. And every time I picked up a pen and started a novel and started thinking, yeah, okay, I could do this, it became apparent to me how difficult it was and how much time it needed. And I think I felt I probably didn't know enough about the world to write what I wanted to write at that point. And I had this lovely day job, which I adored and, which brought me a great deal of joy. And it was only maybe about 4 or 5 years ago when I picked up the pen again and started again, like lots of people at home would have done. You knock out 3,000 words of something, you think, I don't know. And I got a little bit further with that one, and I think maybe I have the voice I was looking for now. I think maybe I can write the sort of book that I would like to read. And when it got to that point, and I got to about 20,000 words, and that was the stage where I thought, listen, it's incredibly painful to keep writing because writing is really difficult. But at this point, I think it would be even more painful to stop writing. And so I carried on for the first time. But I think, you know, I tried, but just, I don't know how you felt with the first thing you wrote, but it was the first time the momentum was with me. And I thought, this might be an actual book and I would enjoy reading this book.
So we're already deviating from my script here because I have to ask. So I think there are probably a fair number of aspiring writers watching. So there were some false starts and some novels that maybe only had a few thousand words, and then you thought, nah, no. Is there a drawer full of almost novels?
There's not a drawer full, but for example, I had a sort of heist novel at one point where somebody had previously worked for the security services, and I'd always remembered it, and I always remembered that thing of someone rather unassuming, and you wouldn't have known they were in MI6. And of course, when Elizabeth sprang to mind in the Thursday Murder Club, that immediately, like anyone, all of those failed novels, you use them for parts, right? There's always something in every novel because there's a reason you started writing something, you know, because usually there's something. But yeah, anyone at home, of course, you've got to start 5 novels before it's the one that really counts. You know, don't you? I think you have to kind of, there's got to be a lot of false starts. And, you know, in my TV career, it's easy to have false starts because, you know, you come up with a format, you can come up with another one tomorrow, another one the day after. With novels, I mean, it takes a long time to start again and start again and start again, which maybe is why I was 49 when my first one was published.
I do like what you just said, because I think that there's a lot of truth in that there, you know, there are almost like no failures when you're writing fiction, that you know, the half-finished novel or the half-finished short story has something in it, a scene, a character, a little bit of description, which will eventually be the seed of something better and hopefully publishable.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. I mean, you know yourself when you're writing when something excites you. You know, you'll know when a scene excites you or a character excites you or a line excites you. You know that feeling. And it was only when the whole book excited me, I thought, I'm going to carry on with this. But yeah, anyone who's got a drawer full of things, believe you me, some of the characters who are sitting in your drawer will not be staying in your drawer. They will come out and they will meet new friends when you write something else.
I think I know the answer to this based on what you just said, but maybe it's worth clarifying, because a mystery is a particular form with particular expectations about surprising reveals and unexpected twists. One of your readers asks, when you write, do you work backwards, knowing the ending, or forward, letting the story find its own ending as you write it? And I'm pretty interested to hear that myself.
A bit of both is the truth. A bit of both. I have, you know, like in any job in life, I like to know where the finishing line is. You know, I like to know where I'm headed, and I know where I'm starting, but I don't know what route I'm going to take. That's for sure. And so, yeah, I normally know where I want to go, and therefore I know which false traps to lay. But I think because the Thursday Murder Club has 4 main characters, and there's 3 other characters who form quite major parts of the plot as well, and I try and start each new chapter with one of those characters, I am slightly constantly taken by surprise by one or more of them. You know, I'll think I'm heading in a certain direction, and say Ron will take me in an entirely different direction. Or the first book in Thursday Murder Club, Bogdan, who the Polish very handy man, he was literally only in one scene. He was in a scene where I wanted the property developer to look like a bad guy, and so I needed a foil. And he literally just sort of said one line in that, and I just thought, oh, you're an interesting fella, Bogdan. I bet you've got more to tell us. And then I literally, about 4 chapters later, just started a scene with Bogdan Jankowski sitting on the patio. And I thought, I wonder what's going to happen after that. And it just sort of, he sort of told his own story to me. And that is the joy of it. You know where you're going, of course, you've got a rough idea, but firstly, you can go via very circuitous routes. And secondly, the thing that I worked out, which is wonderful, is when you get to the end of the book, and you've pretty much got it, you know, it's got a form, it's got a story. you can reverse engineer bits of crime fiction and thriller fiction. You can sort of say, oh, actually, if I wrote this thing in scene 3, this would make this payoff seem like 20 times
Yes.
better and make it seem like, and so when people say, wow, that plot is so complex, you go, well, it wasn't when it started. It's only, I don't have any post-it notes or anything. It's only at the end where I just think, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if actually this happened early on in the book? And so there's a lot of reverse engineering goes on, I think, in crime and thriller writing.
I did know a writer, Lauren Bucas, who wrote a book called The Shining Girls about a serial killer falling through time. And she created one of these actual murder walls. You've seen them in the movies. It's the pieces of string connecting to various photographs. And I always think, I should have a murder wall when I design a story, but I'm just not that organized.
That's my worst nightmare, because I don't like there to be too strict. You know, I honestly, because I try and write from character more than from plot, I want the characters to be able to go somewhere. You know, I want them to start a scene in one place and take me somewhere unexpected. You know, I want that, and then I can go back and tidy up afterwards. You know, I let them do their worst, and then I go back and think, well, listen, Ron, I understand that's what you want to do here, but in order to let you do that, I'm just going to have to go back a couple of scenes just to set that up for you. And I think with those big charts, and I get why people do it, for me, I would feel like I'm just filling in the gaps.
Right. So is there then a lot of waste material where you let characters go down various alleys and side roads? Or no, it pretty much all goes right in, eh?
It pretty much does go in, really, is the thing. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You know, my view of it is, you're not, you know, I'm not Dostoevsky, and I'm not going to create the great, you know, kind of masterpiece that's going to be read for 500 years. I want to create something really entertaining that really speeds along. And I've got a deadline, and I'm being paid. And I think of all those things, you know, as I'm doing it. And yeah, so I'm very sort of, I write the thing that I want to write. I'm very efficient with words. I'll sit down for 2 hours. I'll write 1,000 words. And I'll try and get a whole thing finished. I'll try and get a beginning, middle, and end in that 1,000 words. And there's, I think from TV, for years and years in TV, I'm very, very, very aware of what gets edited out. Right. You know, I'm very aware on TV that there's literally just cut to the gold all the time, just cut immediately to the action, cut to the joke, cut to whatever it is. And if I'm writing a sentence that feels to me like I'm just wasting time before the next sentence, I just stop writing that sentence and go to the next one. Is sort of the thing. And so there's not a huge amount of natural wastage.
So that, I think that answers the question. You know, I sort of have you sort of beat me to the next question, which is whether you work by an outline. But it sounds to me like maybe if there is an outline only in your head and only a loose framework.
Yeah, I think that you know, like with a TV format, I know the direction of travel. You know, I'm always trying to move forward all the time. But and if I need an outline, it's there. You know, I'll always, usually in my notebook in front of my computer, I've got written down what the next 5 scenes are. So, you know,
I do that too.
Okay, that's good, because then it's like, well, that's my next 5 days. You know, I've got that, and it'll be, Ron does this, Elizabeth and Joyce go down to Hove. You know, Ibrahim goes to a bookshop, and I know what I want to happen in all of those scenes. You know, I don't always get to those 5 scenes in that order, is the truth. Sometimes I do. So I always know my next few steps. I always know that. But beyond that, by and large, those 5 scenes tend to then tell me what the next 5 scenes are going to be, and then what the next 5 scenes are going to be. I end up where I expected to end up. You know, I always end up where I'm going. But the story reveals itself to me, which is a fun way of writing, I think, because if it's entertaining me, hopefully it entertains readers. Yeah,
reminds me of that old adage that that writing a novel is a little bit like driving at night. As long as you can see to the end of the headlights, you'll get where you're going.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, isn't it? And that's why, firstly, why it's fun and why it's quite seat of the pants. But secondly, why it seems never ending, and it seems like such an impossible task, because you know the thing right in front of you seems impossible, and then in the back of your brain you think, you know, when you finish this bit, there's like a load more to do as well that you're not even thinking about. I mean, loads and loads more.
Yeah.
But it's step by step, bird by bird, isn't it? You've got to just you've just got to keep on.
So I like what you just said. I won't endlessly linger on process, but when you sit down, you're looking to write a whole complete scene. So when we read a chapter, that's a day's work. The idea is to have the beginning, middle, and an end of that, and to complete emotion all in one sweep, as opposed to fragmenting things.
Yeah, exactly that. I'll try and do 1,000 words, and so just coincidentally that happens to be how long my chapters tend to be, because that's how long I spend, And so I'll usually start. I think, okay, which character? I know what I want to achieve in the scene. I know I need to drop in a clue. I need to move the action to a different place. I need to establish a timeline. Whatever it is I need to do. I need to introduce a new villain. Then I'll be thinking, who do I want to write today? Do I want to be in Ron's head? Do I want to be in Elizabeth's head? And then I'll just set off on that scene. And usually halfway through the scene, I think of an end line, and I think, oh, that's a nice end line. That's a lovely place to leave it. Whether it's like a character thing or a kind of, oh, I've got to turn to the next chapter thing, but something. And once I've got that, I'm like, okay, I know where I'm headed in this 1,000 words. And then I kind of I fill in the gaps, I suppose. But that's always my process. And then if I'm ever stuck, which obviously I am quite a lot, I just write a Joyce chapter. Because Joyce's diary is just, to me, that comes spilling out, because she writes in such a lovely stream of consciousness, which might feel in certain hands artfully written, and it's sort of not, because it really is a stream of consciousness, and the words tumble out of me in the same way they tumble out of Joyce, and those scenes just kind of race away with me, which is lovely.
Well, and also it's one of the great pleasures of the book. I mean, we know there's a murder to be solved, and we know that our heroes are often in tremendous peril, that there are threats circling them. Mm-hmm. But Joyce still has time to think about her daughter and, fret about men, sort of daydream about men, and those concerns are important to her. And so we sort of circle around those, even though we're aware of these tantalizing hints of threat around her. Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of crime fiction, isn't it? Is you know where you're headed. Listen, I've told you someone's been murdered, and at the end we're going to find out who did it. Right. And so, like in a TV format, listen, the reader or the viewer instantly feels, okay, I'm comfortable. I know where I am. Okay, I know where I am. Listen, you can pull the rug from under them, but by and large, I know where I sit. I know what, I know where we're heading. And you can then take them on such a fun journey, because they trust that you're not just going off into some, this is not just going to end some weird place where they didn't expect. They know it's going to come back to where they want, which is who did the murder, and are you going to get them? And it means that you can write character stuff, and that people are happy with it. So long as action is always moving, so long as stuff is always moving forward, never going backwards. And even in Joyce's chapters, she can be talking about, her new vacuum cleaner, and she can be talking about, the daughter's boyfriend, or in The Man Who Died Twice, there's a long digression about which way the slats on Venetian blinds should go. Should go down. Yeah, but she's always dropping little things in and moving the story on, and asking questions about the story, and suppositions about the story. So we never end a Joyce chapter at the same place we started. We're always a little bit further along the story, and I think so long as you do that in every chapter you write, then people are just happy to spend time with your characters.
Totally. And there's so much, there's the information, the brute information, the next clue, what do they find out? But there's so much more going on here than just discovering the next clue. The next clue has to be commented on, is an opportunity for the characters to express their beliefs and the things that they care about. I every time I think about it, I laugh. There's this thing that Joyce says when they're considering a possible suspect, where she says, maybe the killer was a woman. She said, more women are killing men these days. And when you think about it, that really is another kind of progress, isn't it?
But it's and it's true, and you can you can use crime fiction to tell the stories about the world that you want, and you can use it to give your view of the world as well, in a really interesting way. Again, because we've always got that life buoy that we're holding on to, which is we've got the murder, we're going to see who did it. So
Right.
we're always there, we're safe, we're afloat throughout, and so we can go all over the place.
I have a few more process questions, and then we're going to move on to some other subjects. People want to know if you write longhand or on a computer.
On a computer normally, yeah, and on a desktop as well. I never use a laptop. So if I'm on a train or something or in a hotel room, I will write longhand. If a scene is in my head that I've got to get down, then I will. I've just been writing a scene for book 3. We just went on a spa holiday in Spain. Okay, and I'm not someone for spas and massages and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, my partner persuaded me to have this 3-hour massage treatment thing, you know, with all the kind of essential oils and massage and the tinkly music, all of that stuff.
Did they put cucumbers on your eyes?
No, but I had some sort of very, very soft, beautiful kind of cotton kind of eye thing on you. I couldn't see anything, that's for sure, and I couldn't hear anything, but it was just kind of very beautiful if you like that sort of thing, which I don't. And as I was there, I was thinking, right, listen, you're supposed to be relaxing here. So you're supposed to think about something, let your mind wander. And what I actually thought about was, I wonder how Ron would feel if he were having lavender essential oil rubbed into his body, listening to Peruvian panpipe music. So I thought, well, how would Ron feel about this? And there's a plotline in the 3rd book which allows me to put him in that situation. And so across that 3-hour massage, I wrote a scene in my head which was Ron being massaged and what he's thinking about, and something that moves the plot along and character stuff. And at the end of that, yeah, straight outside, longhand, write out this scene, beginning, here's the middle, here's the end, here's the 3 key lines I wanted to put in there, here's the 4 kind of jokes I thought about how Ron might react to, you know, being massaged. And so, you know, in those situations, I'll write longhand, but normally just me and the computer and a blank wall behind it.
Readers want to know if you're a morning writer or an evening writer, what you drink while you're working, and what's the password to your laptop.
That's a good question.
I don't know why they want that last one. That's strange.
They go, I write when I've literally run out of every single excuse not to write. So I will prevaricate as much as possible. It's like going to the gym. You know, anything that I can do, I won't do. Then I'll make myself a cup of herbal tea, light a candle, which is an old Marion Keyes trick, and then sit down and do it. But honestly, it can happen anytime. I've never worked out if there's a time my brain works better. I think that might be a myth. I don't know if you do. You have a very fixed routine?
No, I mean, I say I do, but in all honesty, no. It tends to be very catch as catch can.
Yeah, but don't you think? And then some days it doesn't work, and some days it does. But then I can never see any correlation. It's not like, I don't think anyone sitting at home or us or anyone would go, if only I just wrote at 3 o'clock every day, I would win the Pulitzer. You know, I think it's I think you just have to force yourself to write if it's 11 o'clock, especially, you know, most people who start writing first novels, you know, you're in full-time employment, you know,
right.
you do, or you've got young kids or whatever it is. And so I think, don't panic and think that writers have this thing where they're able to give themselves sort of 5 hours completely free at some point with absolute silence. I think writers, even on their 10th book, are catching an hour at a time when they can do in between things to write. And so I think if you only have an hour or 45 minutes, you know, when you've got peace, then use that time to write, you know. And I think routine is overrated, other than make sure you keep the word count up. Make sure you are, you know, make sure you just write, and don't leave it a week until you write again. The
only thing that I know is that the later in the day I leave it, the worse I feel. That as the day goes on, you know, if it gets to 3 in the afternoon and I still haven't worked, I start to get an edgy, harassed kind of something has gone awry in my day type feeling.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, you feel terrible about yourself. That's the truth. But, you know, maybe your editor would say, it'd be fascinating someone should do a time and motion study on writers, and they get readers to read every passage in the book and mark them out of 10. And so we'll rank the best writing in a book. And then you compare that to the time of day and your mood when you wrote it, and see if there's any, perhaps you write better when you're harassed. Perhaps you write better full of self-loathing. You know, it's possible, isn't it?
Well, I hate to find out that I do my best writing from 4:15 to 4:45 every day, because if I miss that slot, you know, I just think, well, I'm not going to write at all. What's the point?
Yeah.
I know it'll just be.
What's the point of me writing 9:30 at night? We know I write rubbish at 9:30 at night.
Yes. Yeah. Your mother lives in a retirement home, not entirely unlike Cooper's Chase. Now, this is something I've gleaned from some of the online talk about the books. What has she made of the novels? And has she offered you any useful feedback?
Like all mothers, no useful feedback whatsoever. She was actually interviewed this week in the Sunday Times, the UK newspaper. Right in the first book, she said, "Oh, no one here. People don't really want people to know where the village is and this kind of stuff." Right. And now they all love it. Now they're they're in the newspapers and on telly and all this kind of stuff. And even in the Sunday Times, you know, at the end, you can tell someone's a mother. You know, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I'm getting these lovely reviews, and you know, book sales are terrific, and New York Times bestseller, and I'm feeling good about myself. And then she's going, he writes in very short chapters. I do find it quite staccato. I get used to it, but I'm like, oh my God, in the Sunday Times. And you know, she thinks if she presages that paragraph with, "I'm very proud of him," but that she gets away with it. But it's she loves the book. She was very worried that she would get sued, or that people in her retirement community would recognize themselves and kind of say, what is this? But I think the book is such a sort of joyful reflection on the people around her and of that sort of community. And there's no one's patronized. I think everybody there is very, very comfortable with it. And she feels, I think she feels she can show off about it now, even if it is staccato.
I do have a theory about the books. I think that, you know, they're so satisfying and so pleasurable, they would have been a success whenever they were published. But I do have a theory that one of the reasons why the books are more than just hits, one of the reasons they've kind of become almost like, phenomenons, is that we've gone through a rough few years. There's been so much ugliness politically, and so much anxiety about, everything from COVID to global climate change to the economies. And there is so much kindness in that. This is not building to a question. I mean, I just think, you know, even though the books are about murder and some terrible things happen in them, it's hopefully not a big spoiler to say one of our beloved four is hurt quite badly in in the second book, you know, and that's a very painful, shocking scene, you know, but there's just so much kindness and humanity in it. You love everyone in the retirement home, you know. You love our four heroes and the people they've sort of brought into their orbit around them. You even kind of often wind up loving some of the most despicable characters in the story, because even they are sort of, you know, they have their charms. Yeah, their malevolent charms.
I think it's right. I mean, I've always been of the view that people like warm entertainment and kind entertainment, and you know, most big hits have a warmth at their heart. Most big TV hits, but you're 100% right. I mean, the pandemic is one thing, but the divisiveness we've lived through.
Yes.
You know, the narcissists have taken over a little bit, and the sociopaths have taken over a little bit, and we're constantly told on social media, which is not a reflection of the world. We're constantly at each other's throats. We're constantly told that, you know, we're divided by all of these things. And however much we tell ourselves that social media is a bubble, we don't actually believe that. We do actually still believe it's true. And, you know, I've always plowed the same furrow, which is I will stand up for kindness. I'll stand up for empathy. I will stand up for the fact that most people are your neighbors and will look after you. You know, always have done, always will do. Whatever the troubles of the world, there are a lot of kindness out there. Now, a lot of bad stuff out there as well, and a lot of divisiveness. But that pendulum has swung so far, I was going to say swung so far to the right, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
pendulum
yeah.
has
So
swung.
far in the direction of ugliness as opposed to any one
Yes,
political direction.
exactly
Right.
right. But suddenly, writing the truth of empathy and kindness feels like a revolutionary act, and it feels like, oh my goodness, this is like a call to arms. And I think that it's very, very important. I think culturally, our narrative now is very ugly and it's very, very divisive. And I'm not someone who says I'm not going to put a sticking plaster on and say they're there and kiss it better. I'm here to say this is my truth. If I'm on a
Yes.
train journey through England, I look out the window and I see the houses people live in. I'm seeing an awful lot of kind people. I'm seeing an awful lot of people who wake up in the morning, caring about their loved ones, and they'll look after you if you ask them to. And I think that that's what I like to write. And as always, show don't tell. I'm not interested in putting lectures in anything, but I like heroes who are very kind, but also very strong. People who are very empathetic, but will take absolutely no nonsense as well. Those are the people you sort of feel we need slightly more front and center of our political life.
Well, I was also struck by, again, if it's a spoiler, it's only the tiniest of spoilers. The people in the stories are so driven by their romantic dreams, and even there's a drug dealer we meet, a hard woman who has killed many rivals, but she really just wants Bogdan to notice her. She thinks a lot. She spends a lot more time thinking about what she's going to say and how they're going to look at each other and how they're going to talk to one another when he's headed her way than she thinks about, the piles of drugs in her locker. And I think that that's true of most people. I think most people, are sort of float along with their, in their hopes for, I hope this person noticed me. I hope this person likes me.
And again, that's the lovely thing. It's with plot. You could just think, okay, this is a scene where someone buys drugs from another person, and so everyone's going to act tough. But I write that scene because I need that scene to be in there because it, something happens because of it. But I think, well, what's a way to write that scene so it feels honest? And I think, well, listen, it's a woman. She happens to be a drug dealer. It's a guy who's very, very handsome. The woman has the power, really. She's the alpha character, really, in the scene. And the fun way to write that scene, the scene is identical. What happens is identical. Whatever I'm thinking about the people's internal monologue. But to write a scene in which, you keep hearing the dialogue of quite a serious drug deal, but then you're inside the head of someone who's thinking, I hope I have lipstick on my teeth. It's a fun way and a real way of moving the plot along. That's one of my favorite scenes to write. And Connie Johnson, who's that drug dealer, who was a real piece of work, is an absolute joy. She is a baddie. It's really, really fun to write.
Steven Spielberg has optioned the rights to the Thursday Murder Club series. What can you tell us about that? How involved do you think you might be with a possible film?
Well, my view is I'll be uninvolved. My view is I wrote a book that people like, and then I wrote a second book that people like. So why don't I do that? Because that appears at the moment to be the groove I'm in, and I feel like that's something I can do. And Steven Spielberg has made a series of films that people really, really like. And so I'll probably let him go on with, just let him do that. Why swap roles? Why say to Spielberg, listen, mate, I know you made E.T., that's all well and good, but I know a thing or two. It would be crazy. But also, honestly, who has the time? I know you've had all sorts of adaptations done of your work, and I don't know how closely involved you are. But TV and film takes a long time, right?
Yeah.
When you could be getting on with your next book.
Yeah, and I sometimes think, well, I told my version of the story. I had my version of the characters and got to have it exactly the way I wanted it. So if it's going to be a TV show or a film or a comic book or something else, it's time to let those collaborators in and put their spin on it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, in fact, it's even more fun. It's like when bands hear another band do a cover version of their song, and they just think, "Oh, I never would have thought of that." And yeah, you're right. I've told it the way I want to tell it. There's a reason that I wrote it as a novel and not as a film. And it's someone else's job to write it as a film. And if it was, if I was supposed to write it as a film, then I would have done, and I didn't.
Have they hired a writer?
Yes, a guy called Old Parker is writing and directing. He's done all sorts of things. Real Exotic Marigold Hotel. He's brilliant. He's currently.
I love that movie.
He's so good. The last email I got from him, he's in Australia with Julia Roberts and George Clooney, directing a movie. They think, oh, okay, he's okay. He's doing it, and he's lovely. He's British as well. So I think the film, I think they really wanted the film to keep that British sensibility and to be set in Britain. So it's nice they hired a British writer, and I'm in very safe hands with him.
So the rumors that they're going to set it in an LA high school and that they're shifting the age back to 18-year-olds on the characters is not true.
Yeah, I think and suddenly it's going to be on a Wednesday, and you're like, whoa. Yeah. I said, listen, LA high school, sure, but it's still got to be set on a Thursday. That's my red line. No, can you imagine? I think people worry about that for sure, and I've yet to see any sign at all from anyone in Hollywood that they want it to be set anywhere other than a lovely field in Kent.
I'm just saying, I just want you to think about it. I know you've done some work in TV. Just keep your mind open to the idea. Yeah. Thursday Murder Club, but set in a bar in New York, and they're all hot 20-somethings.
Oh, now you're talking. Hold on a minute. They're on a submarine, and they're all hot Navy guys. Okay, done. Listen, who knows by the time the third book comes out? But at the moment, if they don't have a hit with the first book, the second book, will be set in a rodeo school in Montana, won't it? But for now, I think it's okay.
We do have to shift into some biographical questions. My wife informs me that Heat Magazine honored you with their Weirdest Crush Award in 2011. What do you think she's trying to tell me, and should I worry about my marriage?
I think so long as it has the word weird in front of it, I think you're okay. If she was, I think if she was keeping it quiet, then you have to worry about your marriage. I think if she's saying it out loud, she's emasculating me enough that you should be safe.
Apparently you are 6'7".
Yeah.
Is there adequate oxygen up there, and do you have to hunch to breathe?
It is. Listen, I've been 6'7" for almost all of my life. The funny thing is, whenever you walk through low doors, people go, "Oh, you have to. Oh, duck! Don't forget to duck." And you want to go, of all the people you've ever met in your life, you do not have to tell me to duck. I am very used to duck. I mean, literally, I duck all the time. I'm one of the world ducking experts. You're careful how you say that. So it's and the fascinating thing with that is, I've been 6'7". It's a couple of things. Firstly, when people say, "Oh, how was fame when that came along when you were in your 40s? How was that suddenly you're recognised in the street?" And I said, "Well, look, everyone stares at me in the street anyway. They always did for being 6'7". And now at least they go, "Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy from the telly." And secondly, even if you don't want to, you have to be quite alpha. If you go into a room, you dominate a room. Right. And you're sort of like, I would describe myself as like a reluctant lighthouse. There's nothing I can do about it. But
this is why Heat Magazine decided you were the weirdest crush of 2011 because you're this lighthouse of romance.
A lighthouse of romance is a lovely way of putting it. Shining my light upon sailors everywhere. The world.
So on the theory that you are what you eat, what are the mysteries you love? What taught you about writing mysteries?
Yeah, exactly. Well, do you know what? Funny enough, properly early on, kind of 7, 8, 9 years old, and I always think those times are much more important than we give them credit for. It was the famous 5 mysteries. Do you have those in the States? The Enid Blyton ones, the famous 5.
No.
Which is just
my wife is English and grew up with those books. No, I've never cracked one open. I've heard of them.
I mean, listen, honestly, I think the time has probably passed for you to enjoy the famous 5. but there was Enid Blyton wrote them. There's about 20 of them, and it's about a little gang. It's about, there's 4 of them and a dog, so that's the 5. And when I was talking about this the other day, and then I suddenly thought, hold on a minute. So your absolute first reading experience was of this gang of crime-solving sleuths who were the wrong age to be sleuths, and there's 2 women and 2 men, and suddenly that's the book you're writing 40 years later.
I get it, man. Your tastes have not evolved since you were 8.
No, exactly. But then, of course, you go on to Agatha Christie. Of course, you do, and then, I mean, crime writing, it will never, you'll never run out of amazing crime writers. Over here, Ian Rankin, Val McDermott, and Mark Billingham, Dennis Lehane, Harlan Coben. I mean, just the world is.
Anthony Horowitz is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just the endless sort of ingenuity of his plots, and and my God, he's prolific. There's a guy who writes in the morning and the afternoon, Anthony Horowitz. But I've always read crime fiction. That's my thing, and my whole career I've always tried to do the thing that I love. I've always tried to do the thing that comes from the heart, and so my love of crime fiction is very, very deep. And that's the thing with writing. If you're talking about, do you plot and do you work out where you're going? And funnily enough, if you've read crime fiction all your life, you sort of are on invisible train tracks. You've seen all this before. Whatever it is wherever it is you need your story to go, even if it's subconsciously, you've seen someone pull that trick, and you sort of instinctively know how it's done. You know how you enjoyed it before. And so, a lifetime of, as any writer will say, a lifetime of reading is the absolute best practice for writing, isn't it?
Are you good at solving them? When you read an Anthony Horowitz, when you watch a Foyle's War, when you read an Agatha Christie, or can you spot it? Do you know? Do you figure it out?
I honestly try not to. I absolutely, I love an entertainment where I suspend my disbelief. That's the way that's the way I read. I always have done. I'm involved in the characters. I'm involved in what's going on now. Since I've been writing, and since I've worked out the tricks that I pull off, since I've literally had to do them, there are times where I'm reading a chapter and just going, hold it. That's the awful thing. When you read something in a book, especially by a writer you admire, and you think, okay, so that's a clue for sure. I know it's hidden, but it's definitely a clue. Now, if that's a red herring, then it's a very good one because it's hidden and it's a red herring. If it's an actual clue, then I don't think it's hidden well enough. And so to get to the end of the book, you're thinking, please make that be a red herring. And of course, with the great writers, it's not even just a red herring, it's a red herring on a red herring on a red herring. But sometimes you get to the end of a book and you go, oh, that thing that I assumed was a clever little red herring was actually, that was the thing. And so it's about burying those things kind of like so deep, you have to go on an archaeological dig to get to them.
You write mysteries, I write horror, and in the interest of being true to my form, I can horrify our viewers. My grandmother would buy Agatha Christie's, and the first thing she'd do is read the final chapter, which filled my father with anguish. He'd come into the kitchen and discover her reading the last chapter and scream, "What are you doing?" And she'd say, "I just like to see the killer try to lie his way out of it."
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. But you know what? But in lots of ways, she's right. I was just rereading, but I was listening to the Murder of Roger Ackroyd, the Christie thing, and even knowing the ending. In fact, even knowing the ending, it's a very joyful experience to read. It's a very joyful experience because then that's when you really can sort of luxuriate in the elegance of the writing, and that's when every single little kind of clue you go, well, I know that's a red herring. I know that's a real clue. I know that's a red herring, and it's quite a fun way to do it. So I think your grandmother might have been onto something there. The very last page of The Man Who Died Twice. Don't read that first because it's a very important part of the story. The very last scene of The Man Who Died Twice, and I think that it doesn't give anything away particularly, but it sort of caps the whole story. So please anyone who does read the last page last, don't just read the last page last in this one. It'd be a tradition.
It's funny that you should mention Roger Ackroyd, that you should be listening to it right now. I love to be fooled. I love to read a mystery and have that moment at the end when you just go, oh my God, it was all in front of me all along and I missed it. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But there is a satisfaction when once in a great while you spot it. And Roger Ackroyd is one of the only times I've read, one of those mysteries. I think I was about 15 when I read it. I got about halfway through and I thought, wow. And it turned out my was the correct for that story.
That's good. And it's fascinating now, if you read it now, of course, that's a convention that we're quite used to. So it's still clever. Obviously, I won't say it, but it's still clever. But when she wrote it, that's it was such a glorious. So it's just that was quite something when she wrote it. But you're right. If you can solve something, but it was done in an elegant way, you're not solving it because there's like something too obvious was dropped in. But if you go, oh, wouldn't it be elegant if? And then, because the fascinating thing about, if you do have a hunch on certain things in a book, every crime writer has to be consistent. And, that the truth has to remain the truth. So if you have something in your mind that never gets overturned, where every single thing that happens doesn't overturn your suspicions, then often you're right. But, that's one of the joys of it, is making sure in a crime novel that everybody remains a suspect, that you haven't written a single sentence that actually rules them out, that categorically says this person didn't do it. And the more characters you have at the end who could still theoretically, in an unusual chapter, be found out to be the killer, then the better for the reader, I think.
I think it's you defeated this problem in both books very elegantly. I think for the mystery writer, the real struggle is story math, because mystery readers know there's these 6 characters, so I can begin to do story math to figure out, well, it can't be him because that would be too obvious. And it can't be him. So obviously the only character left is the postman, because the postman is so innocent. So it has to be that person. But I think trying to outwit story math is maybe the hardest challenge for any mystery writer. And I think that you did it beautifully in both books.
Do you know what? As it occurs to me when you're talking about the Roger Ackroyd thing, that's in the first book, in the Thursday Murder Club. There's a slight misdirect, and there's a character who lots of people said, oh, as it got towards the end, I thought that character X did it. And that was a sort of a play on Roger Ackroyd as well, actually, where people think, well, it definitely could be that character for sure. And that's fun. And again, but that's standing on the shoulders of giants, isn't it? That's knowing the tricks that have been pulled before and hinting that you're putting the same trick.
There's actually a clue in the first book that looks like a clue that maybe is buried, but not quite, that does in fact turn out to be a really excellent red herring that sort of, but this is the trick about talking about mysteries, is I don't want to spoil any of the pleasures of discovery for anyone just reading the book for the first time.
That's the fun of it,
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's what I love. I thought that was awesome. So we're about out of time. I do have to ask, how long are we going to have to wait for a third Thursday Murder Club novel?
Well, such as the listen, Joe, I could talk about my artistry if you want. I could talk about my creative muse if you want. But let's talk about the grinding economics of the publishing industry. There's going to be one a year for the foreseeable future. That's the truth. So the next one will be next September, and if not, there will be you'll hear about it from the heads of Penguin. They will have something to say about it if there isn't one. So one a year for a while.
Has a title been announced
for the third one?
No.
Well, I don't have a title. I have the synopsis. I literally, funny enough, in the way of these things, I just sent the synopsis to the British and the American publishers. I don't send them the writing at all, because I want them to read it as a whole. If I'm writing a mystery, I want them to read the whole thing in one sitting, so they don't get to see anything. but I've sent them the synopsis, and they all just came back and went, oh, which is great. That's what you want just from a synopsis, isn't it? Now I've just got to write the thing.
That's the easy part. Come on, the
Yeah.
synopsis. Everyone knows that the challenge is in getting the synopsis just right for the publisher.
Yeah, exactly right.
We have pretty much run out the clock. I want to thank everyone for watching, for joining us today for the Barnes & Noble Midday Mystery event. If you are looking for a copy of The Man Who Died Twice, just out here in the States, B&N has a beautiful exclusive edition. They also have signed copies of the book, so you want to hit bnn.com or go to your local Barnes & Nobles to pick up a copy. If you are interested in further virtual events, be sure to take a look at the Barnes & Noble upcoming events page on the website, and they'll fill you in. They've got events coming up with Nikki Sixx and Rick Riordan and Billy Porter and a bunch of great stuff. They're also doing more of the Midday mystery events. I think the next one is with Louise Penny and Hillary Rodham. So that's pretty wild. So check it out. Richard, thank you. It was great talking to you.
Joe, thank you. And thank you, America. And yeah, it's signed copies, all sorts of things at bnn.com. So thanks to Barnes & Noble as well for being a huge support. And anyone who liked the first one, hopefully will love this one as well. But Joe, what an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
This was a blast.